Christians, if you're listening, pastors, if you're listening, this is what happens in America when Christians and the church don't take our place as watchmen on the wall. Hello, welcome to another Israel Frontline update. My name is Robert Stearns. I have been traveling to Israel for 32 years. I have visited a number of countries in the region, including Egypt and Jordan. Just came back from a trip in Africa where I was in Nigeria on the front lines, literally, I was 1 mile from Boko Haram. This intense battle right now in Africa, as Christians are being attacked and martyred on a constant basis by elements of radical Islam. So we come into your home week after week with analysis from Israel and the greater Middle East. I want you to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the share button. It's vitally important. If I could just reach through the screen and shake you by the shoulder, it is vitally important that every thinking, caring person becomes a student of, aware of, and I would say an activist about issues surrounding the Middle East. Because what is happening in the Middle East is a microcosm. It is a first glimpse at what is happening in our world. I would offer to you what is happening in the Middle East is not happening in the Middle East. It's happening in your neighborhood. And whether that has literally come to you physically yet or not, it is on the way. And so we bring every week to you insights from Israel and the greater Middle East and the current global conflict between three houses. I wrote about this global conflict between these three houses in my book, No, We Can't: Radical Islam, Militant Secularism, and the Myth of Coexistence. I wrote this book 15 years ago. It is scary how absolutely accurate it has tracked every situation that we're seeing on the micro and on the macro around our world. Radical Islam, militant secularism, wokeism, far left fascism that unbelievably is now in collusion with radical Islam, and the myth of coexistence. This is what Winston Churchill, the great, the amazing Winston Churchill, this is what he said. He said, an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping that the crocodile will eat him last. An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping that that crocodile will eat him last. And if America and the West continue to bury our heads in the sand and say to these forces, hey, go ahead, take over Europe. Do you understand there are massive areas of Europe now become completely overrun with a radicalized Islam, and police are not even able to function in these areas? This is what we're facing in our generation. Here's what we're facing this week. This week in America, October 24th, one of the oldest synagogues in the United States was targeted with anti-Semitic attacks 3 times within a 24-hour period. 3 separate attacks on this synagogue in a 24-hour period. And I find this very interesting. This is Congregation Mikveh Israel in Philadelphia. 3 times there was attacks. 2 suspects attempted to break into the synagogue. This is in Philadelphia. Do you know the story of the Jewish community in Philadelphia? You can't tell the story of the Jewish community in Philadelphia without mentioning Chaim Solomon. Did you know that there probably would not be a United States of America without Chaim Solomon? A Jewish man in the middle of the Revolutionary War. George Washington is losing his supplies. He's losing his supply chain. They're out of money. And Haim Solomon, a Jewish man, steps in and finances Washington's army, saves Washington's army from certain destruction. Right there in the city of Philadelphia, there's a statue that you can see there today. And yet, the Jewish community today in Philadelphia, under attack in America, a nation that has been designed to guarantee freedom for all. This oldest synagogue, one of the oldest synagogues in America, not the oldest, one of the oldest, targeted 3 times within a 24-hour period of time. Now, I want to turn your attention for a moment to news that you're not going to hear in CNN or BBC or any of these other propaganda machines. October the 25th, the IDF went in to Gaza. Of course they did. They're committing genocide. No, IDF went into Gaza to an emergency medical center where 23 patients, many of them children, their lives were hanging in the balance. And the IDF medically transferred these residents of Gaza into hospitals so that their lives could be saved. This medical transfer was made using 5 ambulances, along with 4 United Nations vehicles. 180 units of blood were transferred. Along in this caravan, there was a truckload of medical equipment that was delivered to Kamal Adwan Hospital. All of this humanitarian medical supplies, transfer of patients who were in life-threatening situations, several of them children, all undertaken by the IDF, and this will never make the evening news. The evening news will continue to castigate Israel as warmongers, as brutal attackers of humanity, and will refuse to report anything like this that happens on a constant. You cannot be near Israel, near this story, which is why I'm begging you to get on a plane and get to Israel. Why? Because you will see the humanity of the Israeli people. You will see the coexistence. You will see the partnership. You will see the yearning for peace. You will see all that goes on in the hearts and minds of the Israeli people. But you don't see that when all that's happening is the screaming of the headlines. Let's go back for a moment to America. We just talked about the vandalization of the synagogue in Philadelphia. October 26th, a Jewish man was walking to his synagogue in Chicago, not far from where my brother lives. He was walking to Congregation Kins in Chicago's West Rogers Park neighborhood, and this Jewish man walking to synagogue was shot from behind. Shots ran out, hit him in the shoulder. The shooter, Sidi Muhammad Abdali, he began to immediately exchange gunfire with police. Paramedics soon after arrived at the scene. This is America, folks. This is your America. Christians, if you're listening, pastors, if you're listening, this is what happens in America when Christians and the church don't take our place as watchmen on the wall. Now, pastors, Christians, I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking through this camera, hopefully into your hearts and minds, saying to you, when are you going to wake up? When it comes to your front door, when it comes to your church, when it comes to your school, when it comes to your neighborhood. We are living in a moment of extraordinary increase of these attacks. Things continue to be intense and growing in their intensity in Israel. October the 27th, 4 IDF soldiers, 4 of these brave young Israeli soldiers were killed in Lebanon. 4 soldiers died in intense ground battles in southern Lebanon, We have friends in the IDF. We're praying for them. Listen to me, please. Hezbollah is firing on average 100 rockets a day at Israel. I live in Buffalo, New York. What would happen? What would America do if 100 rockets per day were being fired into Buffalo from Canada? What would the response be? Israel is going through this on a daily basis. October 31st, one of the deadliest days in Israel, 7 people are killed by Hezbollah rocket attacks, making it the deadliest day in months for northern Israel. 5 people were working in an apple orchard in Metula. I've been in Metula when this rocket fired from Lebanon struck and killed them. A mother and son were killed working in an olive grove near Haifa. Part of the tragedy, many of these workers were foreign workers. They were not even necessarily Israeli. They were coming in for the harvest season and trying to make a living. They were coming perhaps from Africa, from other places, and they were killed. The IDF says that Hezbollah then launched more than 60 more rockets into the area, but those were intercepted by Israel's defense system. Now, on the flip side, the next day in Lebanon, the IDF began issuing warnings to residents of northeast Lebanon's Baalbek and surrounding suburbs. Here's what the IDF did for 2 days. For 2 days, the IDF announced this on X, they announced it through the dropping of leaflets, many different ways the IDF announces, you are in a combat zone. The IDF intends to attack this area and target Hezbollah infrastructure, their assets and installations and weapons. We do not intend to harm you. Please evacuate this zone. What other army is doing this? What other army is proactively, in advance of attack, warning civilians in that area of their need to evacuate? And yet, the IDF, that is arguably the most moral army in the world, consistently does this, consistently warns the enemy when they are about to go in and attack. And yet, isn't it bizarre and yet so actually biblical that the accuser of the brethren, that accusation spirit that just lies and deceives, attacks day and night, where? In the press, in the airwaves, on a constant basis. So that attack in Lebanon brought the Israeli death toll to 33 Israeli soldiers killed in just 1 month, this month, in Lebanon. Those Hezbollah rockets that were firing down, 2 of the Israelis who were killed were Arab Israelis. We've said this over and over again on this program. Those who suffer, it's not just the Jewish Israelis. There are Druze, there are Arabs, there are Bedouin, there's Muslims, there's Christians. There's a whole plurality of people who live in Israel. And all of Israeli society is suffering through this attack that goes on. Now, I want to talk for a little bit this week about UNRWA. UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. It's in the news right now because Israel has passed a landmark law ending any possibility of UNRWA cooperating or being present in Israeli territories. We have known for years that UNRWA is really a cover that Hamas and other agencies operate under. This is supposedly a UN relief and works agency started ostensibly to help the Palestinians. But the reality of what is happening is that there is all kinds of indoctrination, brainwashing that is happening to children through the educational system under the banner of UNRWA.
لأنه نعمل حرب إنه نفرجي اليهود إنه إحنا مش إنه إحنا مش شاطرين إحنا قوايا كمان.
Your tax dollars, American tax dollars, are going to fund this pro-Hamas organization that over and over again has been proven to collude and cooperate with these nefarious terrorist groups. President Trump ended the funding of UNRWA. President Trump ended American tax dollars going to support this defunct, enabling organization. Unfortunately, President Biden immediately reversed that decision and reinstated your tax dollars going to continue the conflict in the Middle East. Is anybody listening? This organization, either actively or passively, has been shown to be in collusion with the worst elements, the worst players on the ground. And yet American tax dollars going to support this. Folks, you've got to become educated about these issues. You have to become vocal. You have to become aware. If you're not, what's going to start to happen, what is already happening, is this seeps into your school system.
أنا أقرأ اليهود إذا بطعن عمليات كيف يعني؟ الدعس عمليات الدعس عمليات الطعن والاشتباك المسلح في المخيمات.
This seeps into the educational system that your kids are being trained in American schools. As history is rewritten, revisionist history comes into place and indoctrination happens. And so folks, this is the wrap up of what we have this week around Israel and the Middle East. It's intense. There's not much good news, but the good news is that God is in control. God is on the throne and God has a people. He's looking for people like you and I to take a stand on the right side of history. You can do that today by becoming a partner with Eagle's Wings. You can do that today by signing the Bonhoeffer Declaration at bonhoeffer.org. You can do that today by going to your pastor and saying, Pastor, what are we doing for Israel? How are we standing in this conflict? You can do that today by continuing to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And until next week, this has been your Israel Frontline update. God bless you.